Today, we uncover the shocking truth about modern American pot pies. Who remembers when a chicken pot pie actually meant chicken, back before it meant whatever a factory could legally get away with calling chicken? Buy one tonight, and what lands in your cart is closer to something scraped off a production line than something your grandmother pulled out of the oven. Actually, wait until you see what's inside some of tonight's list, because compared to a few of these, even a gas station roller grill hot dog starts to look honest about what it is. Pot pies used to be the thing your mum threw together on a Tuesday with whatever was left in the fridge and a crust rolled out by hand. Real chunks of chicken or beef, real vegetables, a gravy that was thick because it was actually reduced, not because a starch was engineered to fake the texture. Now you'd be lucky to find a piece of meat in there you could identify on sight without checking the label first, because most of these pies aren't made by anyone standing over a stove. They're made by a handful of massive food conglomerates chasing a margin, with every ingredient measured out by a machine built to use the least amount of actual meat it can legally call a pot pie. Here's the part nobody tells you while you're standing in the frozen aisle. Several of America's best-known pot pies now use mechanically separated meat and a flavor cocktail to fake a taste the meat itself isn't providing. One brand that built an entire identity on being home-style only gives you about a quarter of the USDA's daily recommended meat serving in the whole pie. Another one invented the entire category 70 years ago, got discontinued completely, and came back under a totally different company, still wearing the same name, like nothing happened. We went through the current ingredient labels on the pot pies actually sitting in America's freezer aisles right now, cross-referenced what longtime buyers are saying about them. And we're about to walk you through the 7 American pot pie brands that are coasting entirely on a reputation that stopped being accurate years ago. Then we'll give you the 3 that still genuinely deserve a spot in your cart. Before we get into it, if you want to see American food brands actually held accountable instead of coasting on nostalgia, hit that like button and, more importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications. That's what actually tells YouTube this story matters, and it puts it in front of more people still buying these out of pure habit the way their parents did. Every share is a small vote for brands actually explaining what changed instead of hoping nobody reads the label too closely. Let's get into it. Number 7, Hungry Man. Hungry Man built its whole identity on being the biggest, most filling option in the freezer aisle, the pot pie for someone who actually wants to feel full. Bigger portion, bolder marketing, a name that promises more than the other guy's dinner. Here's what the current ingredient label actually says once you get past the marketing. The filling relies on mechanically separated turkey rather than whole cuts, alongside a stack of flavor engineering additives, including monosodium glutamate, disodium inosinate and disodium guanylate, 3 separate flavor enhancers working together because the meat itself isn't carrying the dish. The crust brings its own concern, made with lard that's been stabilized with BHT, a preservative that's legal and considered safe by regulators, but one that plenty of shoppers specifically avoid once they know to look for it. This isn't a small, low-budget line trying to make it work. It's a major national brand selling a bigger box with a smaller argument for what's actually inside it. Bigger doesn't mean better here. It just means more of whatever this actually is. The detail that decides it is the words mechanically separated on the label. That single phrase changes what you're actually eating more than the portion size ever will. Number 6. Banquet. Banquet is the pot pie most Americans grew up on, and the one still sitting at the very bottom of the freezer case for barely more than $1. There's real nostalgia wrapped around this name, and for a lot of people, it's simply what a pot pie is supposed to look like. Owned by Conagra, the current banquet filling has drawn consistent criticism for years over its use of what shoppers and reviewers describe plainly as beef powder or chicken powder. a compressed, reconstituted product standing in for actual identifiable chunks of meat. It's also worth remembering that in 2007, banquet pot pies were at the center of a nationwide salmonella outbreak that sickened over 400 people across dozens of states. A recall critics say the company was slow to issue once the pattern became clear. The brand survived that and rebuilt trust the way brands with enough shelf space usually do. What's harder to rebuild quietly is the actual filling, still thin, still more gravy than substance, still priced like it knows exactly what corner it's cutting. The detail that decides it is the word powder anywhere near the meat on that ingredient list. If you see it, you already know what kind of pie you're holding. Number 5. Marie Callender's. Marie Callender's has spent decades selling itself as the home-style option, the one a step, above the bargain bin, styled after an actual bakery rather than a factory floor. The name alone does a lot of work at the freezer case. Here's where that story runs into the label. The current chicken filling lists isolated soy protein and modified potato starch work directly into the chicken itself. And the crust relies on intra-esterified soybean oil, a heavily processed fat the FDA allows as a replacement for the partially hydrogenated oils it phased out. By the numbers, a full 16-ounce pie, meant to serve 2 people, provides only about a quarter of the USDA's daily recommended meat serving in the entire box. More than one long-time buyer has reported counting the actual pieces of chicken in a bowl and coming up with a small handful. Homestyle is doing an enormous amount of marketing work here that the actual filling does not back up. The detail that decides it is counting the meat, not reading the front of the box. Tip the bowl, spread the filling flat, and count what's actually chicken. Most people are surprised by how fast that count finishes. Number 4. Boston Market. Boston Market spent years building a reputation around rotisserie chicken and real home-style sides in an actual restaurant, the kind of place that felt like the opposite of frozen food. The frozen pot pie line trades directly on that reputation, right down to the packaging. The current ingredient list tells a different story than the restaurant memory does. Alongside real chicken breast, the filling includes carrageenan and sodium phosphates worked into the meat itself, and the crust brings in a dough conditioner built from wheat flour. Dextrose, sodium propionate, and sodium metabisulfite, a small industrial toolkit. Most people would never associate with a restaurant known for rotisserie chicken and cornbread. None of this makes it dangerous. It just makes it considerably more processed than the brand's own image would ever suggest, and a long way from anything actually prepared the way the name implies. The detail that decides it is the dough conditioner line specifically. A restaurant known for simple food does not need a stabilizer list this long to hold a pie crust together. Number 3. Swanson. This is the one with the strangest story on tonight's entire list, because the name genuinely earned its place in American history before any of the current controversy even started. Swanson invented the pot pie category outright in 1951, 2 years before the same company invented the TV dinner and changed how the entire country ate in front of the television. For decades, Swanson pot pies were simply what the category meant. Then in 2010, the company that owned the brand at the time discontinued the entire pot pie line completely. It was gone, finished. And then, after the brand changed corporate hands again and landed with Conagra in 2018, Swanson pot pies quietly came back. Manufactured by an entirely different company than the one that built the reputation in the first place. The knife brand, gun brand, and now a pot pie brand pulling the exact same move. A name you trust, sold, discontinued, and revived by whoever bought the rights with zero obligation to make it taste anything like the version that earned the trust to begin with. The detail that decides it is simply knowing the timeline. The Swanson in your freezer today has never once been made by the company that invented the category, and nothing on the box is required to tell you that. Number 2. Great value. Walmart's Great Value Pot Pie is exactly what it looks like, the cheapest version of the category sold at the largest possible scale. And there's an honesty to that most other brands on this list don't even attempt. The current filling actually includes roasted chicken tenders and chicken stock rather than powder or paste, which puts it ahead of some pricier names already covered tonight. Where it earns its spot here is the crust, built with palm oil, and the overall composition, which leans heavily on modified cornstarch and dried milk to bulk out a filling that's thin even by frozen pot pie standards. It is exactly what a $1+ pot pie should honestly be expected to be, no more. The detail that decides it isn't a single shocking ingredient, it's the portion itself. Weigh it against literally anything else on tonight's list, and the gap becomes obvious in your hand before you've even opened the box. Number 1. Stouffer's. Here's where we need to stop and be completely fair, because Stouffer's is the one entry on tonight's list that genuinely surprised us in the other direction. And it's exactly why it belongs at number 1, instead of buried in the middle. Owned by Nestle and marketed as a classic, old-fashioned American comfort food, Stouffer's actual current ingredient list holds up better than almost anything else on this list. The crust is made with real lard rather than intra-esterified oil or shortening, and the chicken is genuine cooked white meat rather than powder, paste, or a mechanically separated product. Where it earns its place at number 1 isn't a hidden shortcut, it's the sodium. A single serving runs around 800 milligrams of sodium, and most of these pies are sold as a 2-serving box that most people finish in one sitting, meaning a single dinner can quietly account for close to 70% of a full day's recommended sodium intake before you've eaten anything else. Classic and old-fashioned is doing a lot of the same reassuring work here that Homestyle does elsewhere on this list, just pointed at a different number. The detail that decides it is the sodium line on the nutrition panel, not the ingredient list. Sometimes the thing worth watching isn't what's been added, it's how much of it there is. Before we go on, something worth saying out loud. Everything on tonight's list comes down to 3 things: whether meat or water is listed first, whether the fat in the crust is real butter or lard, or an engineered oil built to imitate it, and whether the sodium and flavor enhancers are doing work the meat should be doing on its own. Those are not opinions. They're the same 3 things worth checking on any frozen dinner, and together they take about 15 seconds standing in the freezer aisle. Most people never check. They see a familiar name, a warm photo on the box, and they toss it in the cart the way their parents did. The gap between what these boxes actually contain and what the packaging implies is bigger than almost anyone assumes until they actually flip one over. 15 seconds. That's the whole difference. So what actually separates a real pot pie from a factory one? It's not complicated. Look for whole-cooked chicken or beef listed by name, not powder, paste, or anything mechanically separated. Check whether real butter or lard is doing the work in the crust instead of an engineered oil. And treat a long list of flavor enhancers like MSG, disodium inosinate, or disodium guanylate as a pie quietly telling you the meat inside isn't carrying its own weight. With all of that in mind, here are 3 that are actually still worth buying. First, Amy's Kitchen Vegetable Pot Pie. It's organic, it's meat-free, and for a lot of households, it has become the honest default, specifically because the ingredient list holds up to scrutiny that most of tonight's list couldn't survive. Organic vegetables, a real butter crust, tofu instead of a processed meat substitute, and consistently strong reviews from people who switched to it for the ingredients and stayed for the taste. Second, Trader Joe's Chicken Pot Pie. Real boneless chicken breast, real butter, real cream, actual mushrooms and herbs on the ingredient list instead of a flavor cocktail standing in for them. Some buyers wish the portion of chicken were bigger, and that's a fair complaint. It is not, however, a complaint about what's actually in it, which puts it well ahead of most of tonight's avoid list on ingredients alone. Third, and this one won't have a single national brand name attached to it. Check your local butcher counter or a regional grocery chain's fresh prepared foods case. A surprising number of butchers and small regional grocers still sell pot pies made that same morning with real cuts of meat and a hand-rolled crust. The same way this category worked before it was ever frozen at all. It won't be on this list by name because it's different in every town, but it's worth the 2 minutes it takes to ask what's actually in it. The pot pie in your freezer didn't lose its integrity by accident. It lost it the moment a company realized most people would never turn the box around and read what actually replaced the meat. That gap closes the moment you ask the right question. We'd genuinely like to know what you think of tonight's list. Tell us in the comments which pot pie you grew up on, whether you've noticed it get thinner over the years, and which brand you think we missed. We read every comment, and more than a few of tonight's angles came directly from people telling us exactly this after our last investigation. If you want to see more of this, the kind of digging most channels won't bother doing, make sure you're subscribed because we're not done with American food standards yet. Not by a long way. Until next time, read your labels, back the brands still doing it properly, and protect your plate.